and welcome to It's Your Time to Shine, a podcast about being a mom in a modern world. Last week, we talked a little bit about bullying and how bullying can affect your children. So this time, we thought it would be helpful to talk about some tips and tools, or maybe some techniques in terms of how to address bullying at home. So first, should welcome and say hello to you, Lisa. Hi, Lisa.
Hey, Jess. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good.
Great. What are your thoughts? Do you have some thoughts about bullying and what we can do to make some differences in our child's life?
Yeah, I think that, I know for me, spending time with your children, like quality time and wanting to spend time. So I love cuddling with Alyssa. I think like these are the moments that actually count, just like being there, being present with your child. I'm not saying like that's the solution, but I think parents making a genuine effort to be with their kid makes a difference, like validating the child. And it, I think, is huge for a kid to know that they truly want to be with me. Because if your parents don't even want to be with you, then what are they supposed to think about the rest of the world?
Yeah, so that it like leads to self-confidence and just knowing that
exactly.
You're worthy of loving.
And when I say that, I also am not saying that, quit your job, be with your kids. I'm just saying that kids know from their perspective when parents are making a genuine effort. So if you have the child who has a mom who's working 3 part-time jobs, she's single, but she's making every effort outside of that, the child knows that. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the part that I'm measuring. I'm not measuring all time spent,
Right.
So it's just the time, the effort that you're truly making to spend with your child.
Yeah, part of what you're saying, it goes back to like worthiness, and if we think we're worthy of someone's attention or love, and it ties back to confidence, but it also ties back to how they interact with others and whether they are going to be like a doormat in their circle of friends,
right.
or if they're going to be a leader
right.
in their circle of friends, or if they're just going to be,
right.
you don't have to, there's a bunch of positions you can be that's not doormat and that's not leader, like in the middle, right?
No, you're right. And actually, I actually try to, like, when I deal with Allie, at least, it doesn't always happen, but when I deal with her, I try to be like, what would I want her to do? Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So if I'm feeling insecure because she's more about daddy one day, right? Obviously, my instinct is to be like, oh, what's going on? Oh, why do I feel this way? And blah, blah. And then I'm like, what would I want her to do if she felt insecure about a friend? I would want her to be like, it's okay. I know my worth. I know my friend still loves me. And if not, then that's on her. I would want her to have that attitude,
right.
that self-confidence. So I try to do that in whatever context.
Right.
Like I said, the way I'd want her to react is the way I try to react. I didn't say react because I am not perfect.
Right.
So, but at least I try to react that way. That's just one example.
That's awesome. I sometimes talk to Bottom about constantly correcting the kids, if they make a mistake, like correcting them, which we have to correct them and we want them to have discipline and to improve and be better.
Right.
But also if we have to be careful not to correct them so much that they think it's okay for friends to correct them or friends to point out things,
Right, right.
So we need to have that balance of like teach them, but also show them what love feels like and what love looks like and what constructive criticism looks like and how to set it up, and understand those boundaries of like who can say, hey, this isn't good, you have to fix it, and who can say like, oh, well, you did the best you could, it's all good, and how to pick those times. And it's really hard.
Everything's harder.
Especially if you have multiple kids, it's really hard to remember each child in that moment. Like, what does this child, what kind of response do they need? What's their confidence level on this particular skill? What habits are they forming? Like, you have to keep like a little database of what's going on with that child at that moment and what they need, right? And so you don't want it to spin out too. So that's incredibly hard and challenging for parents.
That's funny because as you say, everything you say, I suddenly remember. That's exactly what I was thinking when I'm always telling Alyssa, no, you can't do that. No, be polite. No. Or a lot. And then I'm like, God, if I want her to understand that for discipline, but at the same time, I also let her win some battles. And this happened after I realized that I'm saying no too much.
Right.
Let her win some so that there is a balance. Otherwise, my kid's going to be a doormat.
Exactly.
So
yeah, and you don't want to be like that.
Yeah, no, but you saying that, I'm saying that's exactly what I was thinking just a few weeks ago with her.
Yeah, so it's like you're constantly checking.
But I think all of this prevents. It may not be the solution, but all of it helps in, like you said, we can't be there with our children the moment it happens. And if a bully's getting to them or if someone else is like, hey, do drugs, we're not there. But what we can do is at least give them like the foundations for a good self-esteem, positive self-worth.
That's right. That's right. So, and we know the decisions aren't going to be perfect every time, but at least we're kind of giving them that toolkit.
Exactly, the tools, right.
And like we were saying earlier, there is a really fine line, right, between bullying and peer pressure and encouraging someone to do something and forcing someone to do something. And a lot of it is like how you feel, because the truth is, like, you really value sleep. And let's say you and I were to get together, take our kids out of it for a second. Let's say you and I were to get together. We don't see each other that often. I might say to you, like, come on, Lisa, it's only 9:00. Let's go out. Let's go out to this cool place and go have dinner or have drinks or hang out or something. And that feels like, it could feel like, depending on where you are on your spectrum and what's been happening with you, it could feel like, oh, wow, Juspreet really wants to hang out with me. She's a good friend. She values our time together. But if I get too pushy or I don't understand your situation, it could feel like, wow, she's really forcing me. Like, hey, stop it. I don't want to do that. And we have to teach our kids to be in touch with their own feelings and kind of understand and respect how they feel at that moment. And that's hard. That's a really hard balance to teach a child, right?
Yeah, being in touch with your own feelings, I think, is like a dormant thing in this country. I think most people aren't because we don't cry enough. We don't watch sad movies enough. Yeah. We don't touch each other enough. And I think those things are, I think they're one of the most important triggers to understanding and being more in tune with your own emotions.
Oh, totally. And then if we take it even out of the American culture and think about like our Punjabi culture as well, we don't talk about our feelings very much. And especially women and moms are not encouraged to talk about how they really feel and what's bothering them. And we fall into the role of obligations a lot too, right? And so in America, we call it like FOMO, the fear of missing out. And on the Punjabi culture side, it's like the things that you have to do, right? And so there is that funny balance between the two. But I love that you are evaluating now things that put her in a stronger position. And
yeah, I try, and I feel fortunate that I had a kid late, because the things that I think about now, I wouldn't even have thought about 5 years ago. I wouldn't have thought about before our election. You know what I mean? Everything changes the way you parent, I think. Every situation, your personal stories, what's happening politically, everything, right?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of other things that I was thinking about in terms of just being in a good situation if you do come across a bullying type of event is making time to meet with your kids' friends.
Oh, okay. That's good. Yeah.
And then if possible, like, meeting with their parents too. Like play dates, for working parents, play dates aren't always doable. But I think when you volunteer at your child's school, if you can do that for a few hours or go on a field trip. Like I mentioned, I had met this young boy on a field trip. And so you have those exposures to kind of get an idea of like what kids' personalities are and how your child participates with their friends.
That's good. Yeah.
So I think that's really helpful. And then another thing, a really basic one, once your child is school age, or even if they're going to daycare, like in a classroom type of environment, meet your child's teacher.
Definitely.
A lot of insight can be gained by having a good relationship with the teacher. And if you suspect that something's going on, you can even reach out to your teacher. Most teachers are awesome about trying to watch bullying. The reality is, in public schools at least, that there's just only one teacher to so many kids, and so it's hard for them to know what's going on. But if you give them a heads up, you can have them kind of be your eyes and ears when you're not there and just get more perspectives on what's happening.
That's valuable information. Yeah. I mean, right now it is easier, right? She's in preschool, Alyssa, so it's easy for me to talk to the teacher. Ratio's 1:10, but it gets harder, I'm sure, as the kids get older and as you have more kids.
Right. And so like in a Marik situation, he's in middle school, so they change. The classes don't rotate together. Everyone has their own schedule. And then they also change teachers. So he has a class of 23 or 24 for one period and then a different group of 24. Some of the kids might be the same. So it's harder, but I think meeting with the teachers, at least you get a couple constants. You have your child's perspective. You have your teacher's perspective. If you start to get a good relationship with different students and their parents, then you can possibly get that perspective. And one other thing that Budham and I did a lot when the kids were younger, actually every year, we would do a presentation for our child's class, and mainly for Amrik, because kids had a lot of questions.
Oh, wow. I love that.
Yeah, as a Sikh, just being visibly different, wearing a dastard or a turban, having long hair, kids had a lot of questions. And we would do this little presentation, just like get to know what Punjabi and Sikh culture is like, and answer questions. And a lot of bullying can come from this concept of the other and not understanding what someone is, you know. And so that's something we all have to be aware of and be careful of, because of, like you said, the political sentiment has really like played into a lot of the fear around that.
But I love that. I mean, not only you're doing it to help your child, but you're also helping others in celebrating diversity.
Exactly.
And understanding it's okay to be different, and this is why. And these kids get more than they bargained for. Like, they get a treat learning this, because otherwise, where would they have actually learned this information? So you might be changing a child's entire perspective or building blocks for how they view the world.
Right. And the truth is, like, in middle school, we didn't do this, but in every year in elementary school, we did this presentation. So you think like, okay, well, you're affecting like 25 kids every year. And so those kids will go and mix into the population. And so they have a heightened awareness. But the truth is, like, kids really had questions. And I remember when I was in preschool, not when I was in preschool, sorry, when the family was in preschool and I would go to drop Amrik off, there were some kids that would come up and they would touch my dastard. And so like a dastard, it's, you know, it's made out of pretty soft fabric. And I wear bright colors, you know, my personality, I'm always wearing like really bright colors. And so kids would come up, and a couple times their parents during drop off would be like, no, don't touch. And I'm like, no, it's okay. I'm like, you know, they're curious. Even when they're 3 and 4, they're curious and they're drawn to like, oh, this is something different. Why does she have her hair up? And so they would ask me questions, and I would say, it's totally fine. Let them touch. Like, for me, I'm comfortable with it. I wouldn't recommend that you just see a Sikh on the side of the road and like walk up and touch their dastard. Like, hey, what kind of fabric is this?
Can I touch your belly?
Yeah, right. But the fact that they're curious, a lot of questions that they have, if they remain unanswered for many years, you can see how that could turn into something else, right? Comments or...
Well, then they fill in the blanks, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think everyone who is... a lot of immigrants feel that, like with the Mexico build a wall sentiment, with the anti-Muslim comments and things like that, like a lot of us just feel like, okay, we have to be aware. We have to really know how to talk about our culture and talk about our faith if we need to. And all of those different little conversations, I think, help to preventing that situation where a child feels like they're getting comments like lobbed at them that they can't address, and it might become like a situation that escalates.
Yeah, it's like you're like preventative care parenting, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. That's a great way of looking at it.
So just before it even, you're doing whatever you can, and you're doing the best you can. You know, what happens later, you'll see the results, which we did with Amrik, by the way. We saw it. We saw how he dealt with it, and I thought he did awesome, and I think you guys did awesome. So I think prevention and being aware of what could be is also, what I'm just summing up what you said, is also one of the keys.
Absolutely. So those are a couple of things that I would recommend. And then what we could do is, as we start to hear feedback from some of our friends and family, we could maybe continue to share other things that work.
Definitely. I think there's a lot of valuable insights from a lot of parents. You know, I encountered something, you know how we were talking about, being in a foreign country, and how it's even harder for the parent when English isn't their first language. So I went to my tailor yesterday, and she just started talking to me about how frustrated, and she's 32, she's from Pakistan, speaking to me in Urdu, and she's like, I'm so frustrated. My daughter, who's 13 years old, she holds everything in. She won't talk to anyone. She doesn't talk to us. And then she's like, we've gone to talk to her counselor. She skips school. She just watches TV all day. So I'm like, is something happening at school? Is she being bullied? And she goes, yeah, something happened with a bunch of girls, but she doesn't say anything because she holds everything in. And then she just comes home and she's just quiet. And then my tailor was saying how, one thing that got me, she said that apparently Child Protective Services is coming because they're like wondering what's going on with her. And she's frustrated because she cannot explain to them that she's like, we do not hit her, we don't do anything. It's just, this is what's happening. And we don't even know how to tackle this because she will not talk to us. And then, so she's like, I scold her a lot and I yell at her. Maybe I shouldn't. My husband always says, why don't you just do it more in a loving way? What got me was her frustration. She was like, I want to hug her. I want to kiss her. I want to say it's okay, but I don't know how to. I was never taught.
Aww.
I got teary-eyed when I heard her. So her frustration just got me. And obviously something's up in school. It seems, I met this girl because she gave me parking pass last week. And she's just quiet and very reserved. But something is happening in school and she's not able to talk to her parents, anyone, and she's just holding it in.
Oh, no.
And it just made me really sad. Made me appreciate where we are and the fact that we do have a voice and we can talk. But I felt for this little girl. Felt for her mom who's just trying.
Right.
All I could do was be a listener at that time, But I did say definitely talk to the counselor, continue talking, take somebody there who speaks English. My mom actually is really close to her. She talks to my mom. And I'm like, just so someone can, I might even actually. And as I'm talking, I'm like, I should go.
Yeah. Well, I was about to say, like, maybe there's something we could do. I think you going with her would be great and helping her, because the last thing you want is CPS to be involved, because the system isn't designed to have a compassionate understanding of what's happening in a family's life and a child's life. I hate to say that, but that's the truth.
No, it is true. It scared me when I heard that. And she said, we're so frustrated. They keep coming to the house. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. And they're probably wondering, because of truancy, right, why the child's not coming to school. Another thing maybe we could do is like look at our networks and see if there is another child the same age that could maybe talk to her, and she might feel more comfortable venting, and just to say, this is another situation. Like, being from Pakistan, that's a country that gets a lot of negative discussion in the news. And so maybe people make comments because of that. And we don't realize, being of Indian heritage, there is a difference between India and Pakistan. We don't think of it because culturally there's so many similarities, but in the reality, just the name can mean something. And so maybe someone said, hey,
that's
are you
a good
from
idea.
Pakistan? And they gave her a hard time or something. So
yeah, it doesn't even say. She has a younger sister who's about a year younger, and she goes, the younger sister's the opposite. She's very happy-go-lucky. I'm like, well, is she close to her sister? And she's like, no. But maybe,
so maybe there's something
I can talk
there
to her sister.
Yeah. And get them together.
So.
And some kids at that age too, because 13, 12, that's like the age of Bhavneet, so I feel like.
Yeah, what grade is Bhavneet?
She's in 8th.
She's in 8th grade as well, this girl.
And I will tell you, kids can be mean in middle school. I mean, kids can be mean, and they can be mean in middle school. And so some of the things that I might try with my child is like, how do we measure our value and our worth, so you know about that. But also, like, if someone's being mean, how do you stand up for yourself? And why do people say the things they say, like trying to understand their perspective and what they know. But so let's talk about that a little bit more. Let's not like drop the ball on this.
All right.
I'm gonna maybe later you can send me a text and let me know like what area she lives in, and then I'm gonna check against some of the Punjabi Sikh friends that I have from Virginia and see if there's kids that might be the same age. That would be great.
And I'm going to talk to my mom, because my mom knows a lot more about this, so I'm going to find out. Because she just kind of told me a little bit, but she said, I always talk to your mom. So.
Yeah, and your mom having raised 2 kids and then being in that area and being close would be another great person to go to the school with her as well, because she can relate to some of the different concerns,
This is my alma mater, this school. So it's right by my parents' house.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so you have your own connections with them. All right, well, this has been a great discussion, Lisa. I think we all need that reminder, that wake-up call. Like, we need to be vigilant in what's going on in our kids' lives. It's so easy to get wrapped up in the day-to-day, but we have to be involved with them, really listen, ask questions to listen, and try to surround them with opportunities to share what's happening with them in their world. And so with that, I'll thank you and thank our listeners for listening to this episode of It's Your Time to Shine.